Work hard and play harder.
And that's just the goal with the Sharp Football Analysis podcast, is to discover and uncover new ways to analyze football, and then share that information and disseminate that material in an easy to understand manner. And then at that point, all you got to do is let the Marshawn Lynch principle take over. Yeah, that is, when we do it so constantly, so frequently, and so repetitively, and so accurately, even those who hate analytics, even the cynics and the skeptics, it just will click in their mind that they're so worn down and frustrated they will have to sit down and listen to reason. And that is the Marshawn Lynch principle. Because like he says,
if you just run through somebody's face, a lot of people ain't gonna be able to take that over and 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 over again. They're just not gonna want that.
Think there's a deeper metaphor there?
Run through a face, then you don't have to worry about them no more.
welcome into the Sharp Football Analysis podcast. My name is Warren Sharp of sharpfootballanalysis.com and sharpfootballstats.com. A good show today, guys. We are going to really explore something with regard to the Atlanta Falcons and some of their issues offensively. The things that we're going to cover on this show. The New York Giants offense and how what they showed us in week 6 was deceiving, and the real Giants offense reared its head again in week 7. Green Bay Packers, they're turning into a run-based offense. How that bodes for the team and for the prospects of them making the playoffs the rest of the season based upon their strength of schedule that they're faced. Todd Gurley and how he's exceeding expectations. We're going to talk about deep dive into Atlanta Falcons play calling analytics. We're going to touch on Ezekiel Elliott, the big call of the week that ended up coming through for us. And Hunter Henry, the GOAT Hunter Henry, back making it happen. I love the nickname that was given out on the Periscope show last night, Triple H, Hunter Horse Henry, the horse Hunter Henry, however you want to lay it out. I like it, Triple H. Here's the thing, this podcast, the later half is going to be part of the Sharp Football Show. The Sharp Football Show is recorded every single Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, leading up to the Monday Night Football kickoff just past 8:30. If you guys are around, want to check out the show live, it's on Periscope. How do you access it? Just follow me on Twitter at SharpFootball. At 8 p.m., I tweet out a link, and then you can watch it. If you're not following me, you need to. If you're following Evan Silva, he'll tweet out a link too. You can follow him on Twitter at Evan Silva. Both of us will tweet out the link. You guys started again at halftime. You could do whatever you want. It's on demand after that, but it's live, and you can actually comment. And there's some discussion that goes on in the comments in the Periscope. So you guys have access to that. So that's going to be inserted here momentarily. Before we get into that, wanted to cover a few different topics. The first topic that I wanted to discuss with you guys was the Sharp Football suite of products. So there's a lot of free, great information out there for you, and I hope that you're taking advantage of it. The first one is sharpfootballstats.com. It's a website that I developed, tons of analytics, tons of information. Most of the analysis that I do is based entirely on what I get out of sharpfootballstats.com, which you guys can see all of that information as well. There's some behind the scenes stuff that I do, some back things that I'm working on and Sharp Football Stats that's not publicly visible, but there's only a few random stats that I'll pull off of that. The majority of everything that I do is on the public facing side of things. In addition, I have my computer algorithms, my models that I use for projecting my lines and things of that nature. That information obviously makes its way out to my clients at sharpfootballanalysis.com. But when I'm sitting here breaking down the games, breaking down the matchups, figuring out what I want to write in my write-ups of the games, which is based upon all my pre-decision-making analysis of these matchups, I'm using sharpfootballstats.com. So if you want to use the same thing that I'm using, you want to get the same type of information, it's all there at your fingertips. Really useful. Obviously, you can follow me on Twitter. I tweet out tons of information, helpful information. You follow Evan Silva on Twitter. He tweets out a lot of great stuff as well, tons of nuggets, tons of statistics. Additionally, he writes a matchup article. That's 100% free, and that is available to you every Thursday evening. One of the best in the industry at breaking down every single relevant player on every single team that's playing that weekend and what he thinks that they might do based upon their matchup in terms of how he thinks that they'll work into the game plan. So those are all great free resources for you. In addition, if you want to get some more advanced information, you can head on over to sharpfootballanalysis.com. That's my analysis website where I do my projections and predictions for the upcoming weekend's games. Now, obviously, you can use that for simply betting on the games, which is what I give to people, but also I give detailed write-ups which contain graphics and lots of analysis on matchups and things of that nature that are very useful for DFS. I've got a lot of feedback of people who are using that information for DFS. Now, why is that helpful for DFS? Well, so many people out there talking about the totals on the games and playing or sitting players based upon the totals of the games. But I wrote an article last year. Evan Silva has done studies on it as well. It's not high totaled games that'll win you tournaments. It's games that will go over the total that will win you tournaments. The only way that you're going to figure out games that go over the total at a high rate is by using some type of algorithm to figure out and then base and overlay matchups onto that. Now that's what I do. That's my specialty. That's what I'm hitting 66% in NFL totals this year. I was 67% last year, 72% in 2015. Lifetime, which have been my two. That's 61% in over 700, close to 800 recommendations. So that's substantial in terms of the amount of information I'm giving out. Of course, that influences lines, that moves numbers. So when we give out games, the lines will move. And I've worked some things into my back end to try to help you guys get the numbers as soon as I put them out there so that all of my clients are getting the same lines as I release them at the best number. And we're getting tremendous line value, of course, later in the week. But if you guys are interested in that, you can find all of my recommendations that have seen that level of success at sharpfootballanalysis.com. I highly encourage it. This week, I actually have my strongest play of the year thus far out there. I'm not somebody who throws out game of the years type labeling or hype things up. So that's all I'm going to tell you. It's just my strongest year to date. Probably have more that will be as strong or stronger, but I rarely release recommendations at that size. And so looking forward to that game and breaking it down over the course of the week for clients. In terms of one of the issues that I have with the Atlanta Falcons, because we're going to dive into this a little bit more detail later, but I've run some new numbers here. This is the only reason why this podcast didn't go up Monday night after the game. Usually I record this podcast, this segment, Monday night after the football game ends. We saw a great game between the Washington Redskins and the Philadelphia Eagles. Highly competitive. The best thing I liked about that game, two younger quarterbacks really proving their mettle on the big stage. Really looking forward to watching these two guys grow over their careers. Think that they're headed in a great trajectory. And I love the fact that we're getting new youth and enthusiasm into that quarterback position to provide excitement and, most of all, a higher skill level into the future. Because I wrote about ad nauseum this past offseason how the NFL could be entering into a quarterback crisis if we don't see better performance from these younger quarterbacks. And I was really excited to see these two guys square off in a divisional battle and really both perform extremely, extremely well. But the only reason why I didn't record this podcast last night is because I wanted to run these numbers that I had this morning and incorporate some of this into the front end of this podcast. The Atlanta Falcons passing game. And in particular, the Atlanta Falcons passing game with Julio Jones. Now, here's the thing about this, guys. A lot of people think that first downs, maybe even first and second downs, are made for running and third downs are made for passing. In reality, what you need to do is catch the defense on its heels. So do things that the defense won't be able to predict. That means balance on first down. That means catching the defense off guard with your play calls and what you're planning on doing. It does not mean what the Atlanta Falcons are doing so far this year. The Atlanta Falcons have one of the best receivers in their league at their disposal. And the way that they are using him on first down is a travesty, especially compared to how we saw Kyle Shanahan use him last year. And let me explain. Last year, and you can find this information at Sharp Football Stats, and I actually plan to later this afternoon tweet out a thread on Twitter where I lay out some of my arguments for this using support from sharpfootballstats.com. But last season, there was a heavy emphasis on getting Julio Jones the ball on first down. Why did they want to get him going on first down? The reason is because on first down, it's a run-pass dynamic where the defense isn't really sure if you're going to run or pass the ball. Therefore, there's going to be more emphasis on playing towards the line of scrimmage and focusing eyeballs on the running back, number one. And number two, there's going to be less likelihood that on 1st and 10, where a defense could run, that they're going to jam coverage over and try to really take out Julio Jones. What is Sarkisian doing? He is not getting the ball enough to Julio on first down. Instead, he's getting the ball to Julio a little bit more on second and then even more on third down. What is the problem with that? Well, obvious third down passing situations, if you have more than 3 yards to go, most teams are looking to throw the football, okay? And the defense understands that, and they obviously know that your number one wide receiver is Julio Jones, so they're going to try to cover him, roll their coverage to him, double him, whatever they need to do to make you beat them with someone else. So it's a problem to focus the ball on Julio on third down in the most obvious situation where you would be trying to throw the ball to Julio. It's the least likelihood to see success when you're trying to force the ball to Julio on that third down when the defense basically figures out in their mind, we're not going to let them throw the ball to Julio on this down. So that's why Sarkisian is causing problems for this team. Shanahan would throw the ball early on first down to Julio, and then on third down, you know what he would do? He would let the other players out there make plays. Julio's target rate on third down was significantly less than what it is this year, and other players would be more involved, so they would be targeting the matchups with the defenders as opposed to just be going to their main man, Julio, in that down. But that's not even the whole of it. That's just half of it. The other half is, how are they actually using Julio on first down? I just mentioned the importance of passing the ball on first down into situations where the defense may be playing the run a little bit more advantageous to throw the ball. This is pertains to all quarterbacks around the league. But in addition, where are they lining up Julio and where are they targeting him? This year, they are targeting Julio on 35% of his targets are to the short right on first down. 35%. Now, obviously, you guys out there, you're not looking at the images, you're just hearing me tell you this. You know that the maximum is 100%. 35% is over 1 of 3 throws. It's more than 1 out of every 3 throws. It's going to the short right. How often are they throwing to the left to Julio? 10%. Less than a third of the amount of time that they're throwing to him on the right side. So the defense already knows on first down, if they're throwing it to Julio, most often it's going to be to the short right. What did they do last year? Last year, short left, 20%. Short middle, 17%. Short right, 17%. Extreme balance across all 3 levels of the short area of the field. They were moving Julio around. They were targeting him all over the formation. This year, they're 10% short left, 25% short middle, and 35% short right. So many passes to the short right. Now, what are they deep when they're targeting Julio? On first down, they're going deep middle to Julio only 5% of the time. Last year, it was over double that at 12%. Overall, in terms of the amount that they're throwing the ball deep to Julio, they're only throwing the ball deep to Julio on 30% of their pass attempts. So 70% of their pass attempts on first down, 70% of their pass attempts on first down when they're targeting Julio are going short within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage. Last year, that number was 55%. 45% of the time they were going deep to Julio on first down. It's 1st and 10. They're going to Julio 45% of the time deep, 15 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. Why is that important? It's because the defense is not going to predict that you're going to be throwing the ball deep on 1st and 10, 15 plus yards down the field. But they were being aggressive. They were challenging the defense. They were being unpredictable. That's one of the things that Kyle Shanahan excelled at. He excelled at trying to attack the defense where they least expected it. It's one of the things I took away from one of Kyle Shanahan's comments heading into the Super Bowl. He said, I want Matt Ryan to run the football when the receivers are covered. And he was asked, why do you want Matt Ryan to run it? Because Matt Ryan, look at him, he's not a very athletic quarterback. And what Kyle Shanahan basically said was, every single time we're on that field calling a play, I want the defense to have to try to figure out how to cover every single possible option. Every single option I want open to our offense, and I want to attack them on every single way that we can, every single time that we're snapping the ball, so that the defense has no idea what's coming next. And that means you're going to have to mentally account for Matt Ryan possibly running the football. And you're not going to be able to perform well as a defense when you're always having to think about all the minute possibilities, such as Matt Ryan running the football. So if the defense has their back turns, or Ryan has an alley to run, Shanahan was encouraging him to do that. And obviously he didn't run it often, because most of their plays were open down the field. Because of the schemes and the play designs that Kyle Shanahan implemented, were attacking multiple levels of the field, all different field areas, and there were options on every pass play for Matt Ryan. That's not happening this year. This year, guys are covered more closely. There aren't as many options. Why is that? Well, number one, they don't have as many guys running the routes. If you look at some of their numbers that I'm going to tweet later, they hardly have anybody who's running deep routes. Julio is the main guy, and some Taylor Gabriel. Last year they were targeting Mohamed Sanu deep. They aren't targeting him at all deep. Last year they were targeting Aldrick Robinson deep. They don't have an Aldrick Robinson this year. So they were targeting guys deeper down the field last year, multiple guys throughout the course of the game. The defense had no idea what was coming. This year that's not a problem for them. And when you attack different levels with different route concepts, that's when you're going to get guys break free. The other thing that allows guys to break free is when defenders, their brains flame out. Have you seen like a toaster oven or some type of piece of equipment just kind of blow up? It just overheats and then just starts frying, and then poof, see a little smoke come up from it. That's what Kyle Shanahan was trying to get defenders' heads to do. Thinking about all the possibilities from different routes, some that look similar, some that look different, all the different combinations that could go from these alignments that he was utilizing. He wanted defenders to get too much into the thought process of what was going to happen, thinking too much about the play before it happens, thinking about a guy's route as opposed to reacting. And then the defender is getting mixed up on things. He's a half second too slow, and that's an edge for them. Sarkisian's offense right now, in a word, basic. Basic. It's sad, but it's true. His offense right now is far too basic. I was talking to you about Julio Jones. Julio Jones going deep on first down. Guess what? Last season, this is what Julio's success rate was when he was targeted deep on first down. Deep left, deep right, and deep middle. Okay, here's the percentages. Deep left, he was successful 54% of the time. Deep middle, 67% of the time. Deep right, 67% of the time. Those are extremely good success rates for 1st and 10 passes down the field. And in addition, they were doing that 45% of the time. High volume, deep down the field, high success delivered. What are they this year in terms of success rate deep down the field? On first down to Julio. Deep left, 0% success rate. Deep middle, 0% success rate. Deep right, 33% success rate. And in addition, they're only going deep to him 30% of the time. You are having nil success going deep to Julio on first down, and you're not doing it enough. Why do you think the defense doesn't respect that? Why do you think the defense crowds closer to the line of scrimmage, is better able to stop your run, is better able to cover the receivers running the short routes? You have to get more explosives on first down. You have to be more creative on first down passes. You have to be more aggressive. You cannot line up Julio 35% of his targets to the short right of the field and just say, go beat him, guys. You have to spread Julio around the field and different levels of the field to make the defense never know what the hell to expect. And then on third downs, you have to get other guys involved. Let them roll coverage to Julio, beat them to other guys. So it's highly frustrating to me as a guy who loves efficiency, who loves, I'm not all about points. Trust me, some of you guys are clients. You know that we bet plenty of unders as well. I'm not all about points. I'm about value when I'm betting on games, and I'm about efficiency when I'm helping teams design plays, design ideas for what they need to do offensively. And the Atlanta Falcons right now and Steve Sarkisian need to get more aggressive on first down. They need to get Julio more involved, and they need to be more creative and multiple with what they're doing in their passing game on first down. First down is the prime down to pass on teams. If you're successful on first down, and many times when you're throwing the ball, guess what? You get another first down. You're just continuing to avoid third downs, continuing to avoid the failure that could come on third downs if you don't get a first down on third down, and most of the time you're going to be punting the football. And in the NFL, as is every level of football, the goal is to never punt the football. Every single drive should end with a touchdown. And if there's some sort of failure there and it's a too negative situation to be in, then a field goal attempt. You want to avoid punts as much as possible. In order to do that, you need to avoid third downs as much as possible, because that is what could lead to a punt. And in order to do that, you have to be aggressive enough on first down. Sarkisian is just not. He is just not. So I'm going to tweet some graphics about this later today. Highly encourage you to follow me on Twitter at SharpFootball. Check out these graphics and share them with other people as well, because that's the only way the Atlanta Falcons are going to realize what the hell is wrong with their offense. Because I don't think that there's a lot of theories and ideas out there as to, what's wrong with this offense? They have most of the same player personnel and that sort of thing. But trust me, there's not going to be anybody who's going to break stuff down like this with some of these graphics and to be able to use that as evidence as easily as we will be able to do from Sharp Football Stats. So check out the thread later this afternoon. With that said, guys, I'm going to jump into the Sharp Football Show, where we talk about a number of different ideas and topics with regard to this past week of football. Remember, check me out, sharpfootballanalysis.com. If you want to get on board for a package this week or this season, you can sign up for the rest of the year and pay in late April of 2018. After your tax refunds come in, you can pay then. You won't have to pay a single thing until then, but you get all the analysis now and through the course of the rest of the season. So highly encourage you to do that. If you just want to test it out for a week or so, you can get a weekly package as well. Check out sharpfootballstats.com. Check out me on Twitter at sharpfootball. Check out Evan Silva on Twitter at Evan Silva. Check out rotoworld.com for player news and information. Check out Evan's matchups article on rotoworld.com every Thursday evening. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. This is the Sharp Football Analysis Podcast. If you enjoy the podcast and you enjoy the show, please give it a 5-star review on iTunes. Please help us spread the word. And the only thing you can do about the Monday night Periscopes, if you guys are watching those, is just give it a retweet. Just share the link with your followers on Twitter. Spread information that you probably won't hear elsewhere. But you guys can say thank you for that by simply just retweeting it. It's very easy. So hope you guys have a great week. Here's the Sharp Football Show.
Oh, wait. There's a breaking news alert, guys. Breaking news alert. I don't know if they've covered this on the networks. I'm not sure if they've covered this on the networks, but breaking news: the Giants' offense is not good. Okay, I don't know if you guys know that or not, but the New York Giants' offense, not very good. Now, here's the thing: a lot of people went by what they saw in week 6 out in Denver. And in week 6, the Giants actually had 4.6 yards per carry. So a lot of people assumed that the New York Giants run game was back on track and they were going to be able to throw the ball. And look at this team. First of all, they were the side out in Denver, absolutely, from the Sharp guys. They were the side. And guess what? They were actually the side this past weekend as well. Now, I wasn't on them in either game. I would have been correct to be on them in Denver, but obviously this week they were completely incorrect. And the reason was because of the impressions gleaned from the performance out in Denver were really fake impressions. And the reason why is because of our advanced analytics. Now, Evan will probably tell me the guy's name who was out in New York talking about the team and how he hates analytics, and I posted a video. Some of you guys might remember that from a while back. But at any rate, this guy, he says analytics don't matter. I'm sure he was looking at the 4.6 yards per carry and thinking that was pretty good. I'm sure that's what he was looking at. But in reality, this is what they did out in Denver. And if you looked at the Sharp box score, which I upload every single Sunday night for the games that Sunday, and of course every single Tuesday morning for the games on Monday night, you would have been able to look and seen that the New York Giants had a 28% success rate, and they had a 19% success rate when they ran the football. Now, how in the world, you might ask, are they 4.6 yards per carry, which sounds pretty good, but only 4 explosive runs? The reason is because, but only a 19% rushing success rate. The reason is because they had these 4 explosive runs. These runs gained a large volume, and as a result of that volume, they were able to have a higher yards per carry. But overall, they weren't a very consistent offense out there. If you guys remember, they had that great opening drive, and then they had an interception return for a touchdown. But apart from that, not a tremendous performance. So what did they do in week 7? Well, guess what? Their offense, identical production, a 28% success rate. They did not play in positive game script. This was the big difference from what they did last week to what they did this week. Last week, they didn't throw the football very much. Eli Manning could just pretty much hand the ball off. I think he had 19 attempts in total. But out in Seattle, when Seattle took the lead on them, they were in a bad game script. They had to throw the football. Eli passed the ball 70% of the time as opposed to only 40% of the time the prior week in Denver. So a massive difference from that perspective, and that's one of the big reasons why the passing offense looked better the prior week, is because they were able to hide it more. And that's the other reason why the run game looked better, is because they had a couple explosive runs that inflated their yards per carry. So we saw the true New York Giants offense. While there's a different play caller, they still have the same players. They are worse than what they were to start the season, and they are a problem. And it's not as if a new play caller is suddenly going to be able to make everything look tremendous and they'll win as 14-point dogs week in and week out. All right, next one, we talk about Aaron Rodgers, and we talk a lot about what Aaron Rodgers has done, what his performance is, how great of a quarterback he is, and most importantly, what he's worth to the line. Okay, what is he worth to the line? But one of the things that, and the number was obviously a momentous number. I mean, I think it was 12.5 points. We talk about worth to the line, and that is the Packers in the look-ahead were favored by 6.5. Then he was announced out as breaking his collarbone. In comes his backup, and with the backup in there, the Packers were actually up to 6-point home underdogs. They ended up closing shorter than that, but that's a 12.5 point swing as a result of Aaron Rodgers' injury. Now, what is the implications of Aaron Rodgers on the team? Well, average field position is massive because, and there's a visualization up at Sharp Football Stats. If you guys don't know, Sharp Football Stats is my website, my stats website. You can just go to sharpfootballstats.com. All the graphics and everything that I present to you here, all the research is done at Sharp Football Stats. You guys can do the same exact research and, do well in betting on these games, do well in your DFS. I share as much as I can with you, and you guys can do some of the work on your own. But at any rate, weeks 1 to 6, Their average field position was their own 47. I don't mean starting field position. I actually have a visualization on the website that allows you to track over the course of the entire game, 60, 65 plays, whatever an offense ends up doing, where on average are they snapping the ball from. And own 47-yard line was where they were with Aaron Rodgers. Without Aaron Rodgers, they were backed up to their own 35-yard line. The only team that was worse last week than them was the New York Giants. Now, on third down, let's look at the yards to go. The same visualization on my site has this information as well. Weeks 1 to 6, on average, they only had 6.3 yards to go on third down, which was the second best in the NFL. They were able to convert 43% of those, which was the sixth best rate in the NFL. Week 7, their 6.5 yards per yards to go was not terrible. It's actually very similar to what it was. But Brett Hundley just not as good on third downs, and hence the 36% success rate on third downs. Now, what was Hundley like passing? So a 59% success rate for Aaron Rodgers, 23% for Hundley. 59% for the Saints, 23% for Hundley. 8.3 yards per attempt for Drew Brees, only 3 yards per attempt for Hundley. 331 passing yards to 87. Now, this is the modern NFL, and while the Packers' run game was solid and phenomenal, you are not going to be able to beat a team when you have this type of discrepancy in the passing game. Passing contributes 4 times the efficiency towards winning games as does rushing the football. You cannot be this inefficient when you pass the football, especially going up against a team that's really good at passing like the New Orleans Saints. So what did they ultimately have to do? Well, Mike McCarthy was on the record as saying we're going to have to run the ball more. Well, they went 51% run in the game's first 3 quarters yesterday against the New Orleans Saints. On the year, they were 63% pass through a game's first 3 quarters. Okay, that right there is a 14% swing on play calling just in the game's first 3 quarters, which is pretty massive. On early downs over the course of the game, they were 51% run. Year to date, they were 60% pass, so that's an 11% swing. Mike McCarthy definitely had to change up the way that he was calling plays and try to run the ball more often. Here's the problem for the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is going to be out for a while. This is a team that has aspirations to still make the playoffs in hopes that Aaron Rodgers comes back. But according to SharpFootballStats.com, they have the 3rd toughest schedule of run defenses the rest of the year. The 3rd toughest, and the 7th toughest overall schedule of defenses. So if you look here, one of the graphics from SharpFootballStats.com, you can find this on the Strength of Schedule page. You can see that this is where they were so far. Okay, from here over, this is what they did weeks 1 through 7 in terms of run defensive efficiency. You can pick out of 30 different metrics what you want to look at. This is where they've got to go the rest of the year. Now, red down at the bottom means it's harder for your offense. So they've got a very brutal schedule of run defenses the rest of the way out. Very easy so far, year to date. Very tough in the future. So it's going to be very difficult for the Green Bay Packers to be productive on the ground, and I'm worried that that's going to be a problem for them moving forward, especially if they have Hundley and have to stick with the run. Let's talk for a moment about Todd Gurley and context. The Arizona Cardinals were the 4th best team in run defensive efficiency headed into this week. The 4th best team. They were also the 4th best in rushing success rate. But, and this is where context comes into play and strength of schedule matters and is very important, like most people don't really consider it. They played the 5th easiest schedule in both efficiency and success rate for opposing rushing offenses. The 5th easiest schedule. Todd Gurley in the first half gained 5.8 yards per carry. Now, the reason I cut it off in the first half is because with such a large lead in the second half and no quarterback as Carson Palmer got knocked out of the game, the defense got exhausted. I mean, the defense was out there left all the time, and so of course the defense is going to wear down, and with such an insurmountable lead, you don't have to do much. And actually, this was one of the games, and this is why you sometimes have to make in-game adjustments for my clients, that I actually gave out on game day the over. I like the over in this game. But as soon as Carson Palmer got knocked out of the game, which was like about 2 minutes before halftime, I started looking at this thing and I realized, look, we're going to have to take this second half under, because I do not see enough points. I don't see the backup Stanton being able to be productive enough. So we ended up jumping on the second half under in that game, and that one cashed easily. So you could have a great handicap or great projections. Unfortunately, with DFS, there's no adjustments that you can make. There's nothing you can do once your lineup is locked and the games kick off. Fortunately, when you're betting on these games and there's an injury like that, if you are quicker to that button than other people who are competing against you and the sports books, if they hang a number, like if they hung to be honest with you, if they hung a 19.5, we would not have been taking the second half under. But they hung a 21, and there was enough value there to grab second half under. Now, it turns out 19.5 would have won easily anyways, but end result, we won on that and got off some of our bet that we lost on the over because Carson Palmer got knocked out. The Rams' success rate on early down passing in the first 3 quarters of the game was only 36%. Not that great, but Todd Gurley, a 59% success rate when he was running the football. Tremendous. Now, you're not going to be able to make this out, but the reason why I'm flashing it up here is if you look at running backs and you look at receiving as well as rushing, combine all that together, one of the pages on sharpfootballstats.com, you can see the ranks of all the players. You can filter by any different number of things, as you can see up here. Todd Gurley is the most successful player, most successful running back in the NFL when you combine passes and rushes, the number 1 most successful. And he's also extremely explosive. He's the number 7th player in yards above success, YAS percentage. What page is that? If you just go down to efficiency and then you go over, it's in the player success rates down under the efficiency menu in the offensive section. All right, this one's quick and simple. You can't unring a bell that's been rung. Le'Veon Bell, he's doing incredible for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and fortunately they're riding him. So kudos to them for riding him. There's still left and right a lot of boneheaded decisions and play calls that the Pittsburgh Steelers come up with from time to time, but I'm extremely thankful that they're relying on Le'Veon Bell and passing off of that. And to Martellus Bennett, who's obviously not watching this because he's sick at home, deathly ill from lack of targets. That was his diagnosis. Lack of targets. He's going to need bed rest. Was the fact that this guy, after the Pittsburgh Steelers go and defeat the lone undefeated team left in the NFL in Arrowhead, complains about lack of targets, lack of playing time. Then he rips his rookie teammate who just caught a touchdown pass, who's playing excellent in that for that offense. The day after they become the number 1 overall team in the AFC. I mean, this guy, I don't know what he's thinking. The Pittsburgh Steelers stood by him while he was dealing with his suspension for a full season, cost the team, put the team in a really bad position as a result of that. They had no explosive elements whatsoever. If you look at that game against the New England Patriots in the playoffs last year, they were throwing the ball to no-name guys you don't see anymore this year. You've never seen them before in their careers trying to catch these balls in the end zone for Ben Roethlisberger. They had no explosive element. Now, as much as it annoys me that a guy like that is going to be so selfish, and based on just morals and integrity, you may want to get rid of a guy like that. There will become a time where the Pittsburgh Steelers need his explosiveness. They don't need it right now, but if they're talking about winning a Super Bowl and going through New England possibly to do that, you are probably going to need a guy who's going to be able to stretch the field and get deep. That's one of the things that the Atlanta Falcons were lacking in, and it's extremely important for them to be able to get that going. So that's something big. Now, speaking of those Atlanta Falcons, I wanted to spend a little bit of time because of Steve Sarkisian and some of the issues that he's had. You're not really going to be able to make this out probably too well, but I did a little study on their first half play tendency. If you remember, a lot of the stuff that I've shared with you guys from what this team did last season was how explosive they were early in the game, how aggressive this team was at getting a big halftime lead. The reason why it was so vitally important for a team like the Atlanta Falcons last year was because of their defense. Their defense is not great, but their defense is good enough if they are playing with a lead where the defense doesn't have to be out on the field and the opposing team becomes much more one-dimensional in that they have to throw the ball. If they don't throw the ball very much, it's a far easier offenses to scheme against, and their defense is far weaker when they have to deal with rushing and passing. Well, if you look at some of these tendencies so far this year, what they've become is a little bit too much pass heavy. A little bit too much pass heavy so far this season. Extremely pass heavy, though, in one particular situation. And that is, generally speaking, after a successful play on first down, okay, which gains roughly 40% of the yards to go. So typically that's a 4-yard gain, setting you up around a 2nd and 6. Okay, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 7, let's say, is unsuccessful, but it's still in that range. If you look at the medium, 2nd and medium, 4 to 7 yards to go. Last year, the team was 51% pass in those situations. Extremely balanced. We had a good successful play on first down. We're going to be able to be balanced on second down and catch you. This year so far on 2nd and medium, they've gone to 68% pass, almost 70% pass, whereas they were about 50-50 last year. That is a massive change and uptick in their pass rate on 2nd and medium. And it's what's even more bizarre about it, if you think about this conceptually, is that if the guy likes calling passes, okay, if Sarkisian likes calling passes, you would think that if you're in 2nd and short, you'll pass less. If you're 2nd and medium, you'll pass a little bit more. And if you're 2nd and long, you'll pass a lot more, right? Generally, it moves in a scale like that if a play caller is intelligent. Kyle Shanahan, 39% pass on 2nd and short, 51% pass on 2nd and medium, 67% pass on 2nd and long. That's what Shanahan did last year. Here's Sarkisian, 40% pass on 2nd and short, very much like Kyle Shanahan, 68% pass on 2nd and long, 53% pass on 68% on 2nd and medium, 53% on 2nd and long. What are you doing running the ball so much more on 2nd and long as opposed to trying to be a little bit more balanced? That part of it makes no sense to me. On 3rd downs, this team actually very similar to what they were last year. The problem is not necessarily on 3rd down, because 2016 you can see 7.4 yards to go on average. 2017 a little bit better than that, 6.9. 44% success rate last year, and naturally you don't have as far to go, so your conversion rate should be a little bit better this year, 45%. The issue to me, and if you guys can make these out, let's hope that you can, but I don't think that you'll be able to, so I'll just go ahead and tell you. I want you to view conceptually. These are all on the site, and I'm going to tweet these out. But one of the issues to me, and I think it's pretty easy to discuss, is how much they're targeting Julio Jones this year versus last year, and when they're targeting him, as well as how much they're targeting other players and getting them involved into the game. Last year on first down, and I'm looking at first half statistics here because that's when the Falcons really built their leads last year, and then they slowed it down. This year they're having much harder problem building leads in the first half. Julio Jones, 29% of the team's targets went to Julio on first down. 29%. The next closest player was Sanu, and he was about half that at 15%. Julio was dominant on first down last year. I'm not talking about production. I'm talking about what he meant to this offense's passing game and how much Kyle Shanahan used Julio on first down. This year, he's down to 23% targets on first down. Gabriel is boosted up to 16%. Of course, and Coleman is up to 16% as well. Now, one of the things that you may be able to see from here, the other issue is how often are they going deep? This is the deep passing on this side of the graphic, and this is the short passing on this side, left, right, middle, etc., etc. Deep over here, you have guys that are being targeted deep multiple percentage of times. You had Aldrick Robinson being targeted deep a ton, Taylor Gabriel being targeted deep, Julio and Muhammad everywhere on the field, deep left, right, or middle, they were being targeted on first down. Look at what's happening now. The only guy that's being targeted on first down deep is Julio, and a little bit to Austin Hooper. I mean, we know that Austin Hooper's not even catching very many passes, so these percentages are very small in terms of he's got a couple of targets deep. It's mainly Julio, and that's it. They're not getting other players involved deep down the field on first down. On second down, Julio was in 2016, 24% of all team targets were going to him. It's currently down to 22%. But the big thing to me is, if you look how many more players are listed in here that are getting between 6 and 15% of targets, that's a lot of players. They were spreading the ball around, being very unpredictable. That's one of the things that Shanahan was an expert at, being unpredictable. And here, very few players catching multiple targets. They're not getting enough people involved. Now on third down last year, they rarely got Julio involved. It was only 18%. They used Julio so much on the early downs that they then got a lot of the other players involved in the later downs. This year, they're giving Julio 21%. They're giving Sanu 21%. They're giving Hooper 18% and Gabriel 18%. And then everybody else is 5% or below. Look at how many guys up here were getting over 5% of the targets last year. They were spreading it out to a multitude of Falcons receivers on third down. This year, it's like their top 4 guys and that's it. So the last thing I want to talk about here before we move on to the next segment, and we're going to bring on Evan Silva momentarily, is how they're targeting Julio Jones on the early downs. The middle of the field is a vital place for efficiency, and the middle of the field, we talked about this last week on last week's show with the Cleveland Browns and Hugh Jackson. Well, this is what they did last year with Julio, and this is what they're doing this year. Let me read these numbers to you. This year, they target the short right 34% of the time. As a result of over-targeting that short right to Julio, they are limiting his targets to the short left. He's only being targeted there about half that, 17%, and to the short middle, about half that, 17%. So twice the amount of targets to the short right, half the targets each to short left and short middle, and only 3% targets deep middle to Julio on early downs. Last year, 3 times more targets deep middle, 9% versus 3% this year. And short middle, 23% of his targets last year was to the short middle. That's 6% more than what they were doing this year at 17%. Here they're overdoing the short right at 34%. Last year, 21% short left, 23% short middle, 19% short right. Very balanced across those areas of the field. Ezekiel Elliott, the destroyer. Look, guys, Zeke, I talked about this on the show the other day. Ezekiel Elliott and I posted this on Sunday morning because I wanted you guys to get involved. I shared this with my clients about Ezekiel Elliott and what he was able to do in terms of his performance. I saw on here some of you guys were talking about Zeke. I don't make anybody start or sit anybody. Those were your guys' decisions. I'm glad that you guys decided to go with him, but I was definitely hopeful that Zeke would perform really well. So congratulations to you guys. I share with my clients why I thought Zeke was going to be able to destroy, and it had to do with directional rushing. And if you look at his game this past week, he really crushed it. 8.3 yards per carry to the outside left, which is the runs that I was talking about. He had 2 explosive runs to the outside left, 3 total runs that direction, 2 of which were explosive, and 4.5 yards per carry behind his left tackle. Really good numbers, which is exactly what I was projecting that he would be able to do. Overall, 3 total touchdowns from Zeke. He only did 27% of his runs up the middle, which is what I was saying. He wasn't going to run up the middle as often, and that's what he did. He lowered that. It used to be 42% his first 3 games of the year. They dropped that down tremendously, and obviously you could see these numbers. He destroyed it. The rest of the season, guys, I'm really big on Ezekiel Elliott the rest of the season, and let me tell you why. It's strength of schedule, which is why the context is important. So far this year, this is who he's faced in terms of run defenses. Look at these teams. Get ready for these guys over here. Green at the top means it's easy for your offense, okay? He's going up against teams. You saw how much Kansas City just gave up to the Pittsburgh Steelers the other week. He goes up against Atlanta and a number of run defenses that are pretty bad this year. I like Zeke the rest of the season moving forward. I think he can have a really good close to the season, make up for what he did to start the year. As we're about to bring on Evan Silva, the segment is "And Still," and that means "And Still," the undisputed, reigning horse with a goat picture. You know who this is? Hunter Henry with a horse. This is his horse. Both these guys are named Hunter Henry. He still is the only tight end, both last year and this year, to rank top 10 in success rate, missed yards per attempt, and yards above explosive. Guys, weeks 1 through 4, I talked about this the other day. 0-4, target him only 7% of the time. The last 3 weeks, target him 19% of the time. Delivered a 111 passer rating. They're 3-0. There are no coincidences. There are no coincidences. The only concern that I have with them moving forward, obviously, some people were arguing with me on Twitter that Melvin Gordon is a great running back. He is a good receiver out of the backfield. He is not good running the football. His numbers are bad. That's one thing I still have against the efficiency of the Chargers. The second thing is they're targeting Keenan Allen a little bit too much. I know you guys love Keenan Allen from fantasy and you got him on your roster and you love that usage, but his success that he's delivering, his passer rating is not good. A 46 passer rating overall the last 3 weeks, though they're 3-0 when they target him. But look at all these other guys' success receiving passer ratings. Melvin Gordon, 120. Hunter Henry, 111. Austin Eckler, 100. Terrell Williams, 108. Like, these guys are crushing in efficiency and success. Keenan Allen down at 46, yet he's the most targeted player. They need to spread that around. All right, let's bring on our good friend Evan Silva now of rotoworld.com. You can follow Evan on Twitter at Evan Silva. You can follow his matchup articles. And I might have to move the mic up here. Let's see.
Hey, how's it going, Warren?
Evan, how are you?
I'm doing well.
All right, buddy. Let's see if you can talk a little louder, guys. Are you able to pick up Evan on this?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I think that's better. That's much better. All right, Evan. So, an exciting game tonight. We'll talk about the rest of the weekend in a minute. The game is about to, let's see, the game looks like it's just getting underway. Yeah, it just got underway. Who do you think is the matchup, or what do you think is the matchup that could determine the winner in tonight's game?
I think it's the cornerback situation on both sides. I mean, these are passing teams with a lot of firepower in their passing games. We know about the weaknesses in the Eagles secondary. For the Redskins, they're not going to have Josh Norman. They are running out Bashad Breeland, their number 2 cornerback, through he's coming back from an MCL sprain, and he's pushing to play. I'm not sure how long he's going to last. How effective is he going to be? I mean, this should be a breakthrough game for Alshon Jeffrey. And then the Redskins have really struggled to defend tight ends, and we know how great Zach Ertz has been in the box score so far this season. And then on the Redskins side, people get frustrated in fantasy because there's no particular guy in the Redskins passing game that is heavily targeted. I mean, Terrell Pryor leads the team in targets on the season, but he's only seeing 5.8 targets per game, and that's because they're just loaded. I mean, they've got Jamison Crowder. They've got, they've been using Ryan Grant, the coach's pet. They've been using Terrell Pryor, Josh Doxson, the 2016 first-round pick. Vernon Davis has taken on a bigger role this year, and of course they've had Jordan Reed, and their primary running back is a pass-catching back. So the only guy really here that has been good in fantasy is Kirk Cousins, but that has not been detrimental to the team. I mean, I wouldn't even say that any of these guys are playing poorly. They're all playing pretty well. It's just that no particular guy is heavily targeted, but they have a lot of weapons to go after these Eagle cornerbacks. The Eagle cornerbacks struggle on the outside. In the slot, Patrick Robinson has been having like a sort of bounce-back year, and I think he may give Jamison Crowder some problems. But Kirk Cousins should be able to get the ball to Terrell Pryor and Josh Doxson on the outside in this game.
Yeah, and I can tell you some of the sharper guys are definitely buying the Redskins, catching the points here in this divisional rematch game. And we'll see how that goes for them. I did not get involved in the game tonight.
myself, side or total, but definitely going to be checking it out, and we'll see if those matchups, end up determining the winner. This weekend, Evan, not as many huge favorites. We saw 2 weeks ago a ton of big favorites. This past week, a lot of really short lines, a lot of toss-up type games that were being projected. What do you think was the biggest surprise, in your opinion, from this past weekend?
Yeah, and before I get to that, people were acting like it was a surprise that there was like scoring was down. All the sharp money was on all the unders. I mean, the Greek sportsbook, which has a great Twitter account, I mean, they will tell you where the sharp money is going, and they will list, all the games, and they'll put a U or an O next to the games, and all of the games that there was sharp money on, and it was like 8 or 9 in terms of the total, they all had money on the under. So wasn't a surprise to the people that pay close attention that it was a particularly low scoring game. The biggest surprise that I had was well, and you already talked about it, the Falcons' offense, just how badly they struggled. And I think that the Falcons' defense deserves some blame here, because the Falcons they're number 2 in the NFL in yards per play on offense still, but they are 26th in the NFL in time of possession, and they're not running as many plays as they did last year. They're not holding the ball. The defense is not getting the ball back to them because they can't stop the run, number 1, and number 2, they can't rush. They're not rushing the passer. So, and they have a really talented secondary on paper, but because they can't stop the run and they can't rush the passer, you're never going to play good defense when you're missing those 2 critical elements. And so all these things are kind of intertwined. And look, I mean, we can look at last night's game, and the play call that goal line play call to Taylor Gabriel was terrible. Of course, we wouldn't look at it as terrible if it had worked out. But this offense really should be fine going forward. I think that they need to get their defensive problems corrected first and foremost, because their defense is legit bad. They entered last week 27th in Football Outsiders DVOA on defense, and I think that we will probably see them in the 30s after the way that the Patriots kind of imposed their will against them on Sunday night.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, I think even though you're talking about the defense, we can kind of take this back a little bit with some perspective to the offense. This defense was not phenomenal last season. Now, they lost their best cornerback, during the course of the season, but they weren't phenomenal. They were, Vic Beasley and those guys could get some pressure on the opposing team, but one of the big things that the defense had in their favor last year was these massive leads that the offense would get, and it would force the opponents into a one-dimensional style of attack in the second half. We are down, from the other team's perspective at halftime, we are down by 17 points against the best offense in the league. We've got to do some things to change some things offensively to start scoring some points to get back in this game. And there would be desperation from those opposing quarterbacks and passing offenses, and it made things a little bit more one-dimensional, easier for that defense to rush the passer and to play into more predictable situations from those offenses. Now we don't have those massive leads at halftime. And now the other team is thinking, well, we've got a lead here. We can just run the ball on these guys. And they're able to call an extremely balanced style of offense against this Falcons defense in that second half. I 100% agree the defense has to play better. Quinn's got to get more out of this defense. But part of it, too, is just they look worse this year simply because their offense is doing not nearly as much in the first half, putting them into worse situations. What was one prediction?
Yeah, absolutely, and they had to anticipate that they were simply not going to be as good on offense this year, because no one is that good on offense in consecutive seasons. You can give Kyle Shanahan all the credit that you want. Like his offense isn't very good in San Francisco, by the way, but they had to anticipate that there was going to be offensive regression, because that's how these kind of things work. And so what they needed to buoy them was a better defense. And that has not come to fruition, and now they're just a mediocre team.
Right. Yep, they certainly are mediocre. They've got enough talent that they can turn things around. It's just about coaching and scheming and decision making, I think, for this team to figure out ways to do that. It's going to be difficult for them. What is one prediction, Evan, obviously with the caveat that hits and misses along the way, but what's one that you really felt confident about, that the analytics or the decision making behind that paid off and that you nailed?
Yeah, definitely LaShawn McCoy having the positive touchdown regression really hit him. He scored a couple of goal line touchdowns. He was very involved in the passing game, with the Bills missing all their receiving weapons, and also that Tyrod Taylor showed up really well. Tyrod Taylor has great home splits over the past couple of seasons, and people were kind of scared to play him in daily fantasy this week because he lacked pass catchers, but he's never really had great pass catchers in Buffalo. And he's able to, with the mobility that he brings to the table, and just the fact that he's an aggressive downfield passer, he's able to light up the box score. And I mean, this team over the past 2 seasons was top 12 in the NFL in offensive points scored. And it's just, another testament to the fact that Tyrod Taylor simply does not get enough credit for how good of a player that he is, how much of a positive offensive asset that he is. So I really like the Bills there offensively. And then we were up, of course, big on that Dallas-San Francisco total. And that was my biggest sports bet of the year so far, that over. And
Nice.
kind of squeaked it out a little bit, but that adds to the excitement. But that was something that I was able to get right.
Yeah, and the other thing I will say, it's getting very difficult betting on totals involving the Browns or involving the 49ers. Their offenses, they keep switching pieces in, and in this case, they bring in a new quarterback, and you like to think about what they could do differently with this guy and how they're going to be able to perform. And then inevitably, they still have massive problems. They just don't have enough talent or coaching, just a whole combination of everything. And you're really relying on them to get like 10 points. Just get me like 10 points or just get me like 13 points.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a struggle. They're being blown out completely, and they're barely able to get there. We got one when Houston played Cleveland, and Cleveland had to score. I think that one was in like the final 2 minutes to send that one into the winning column for us. And then we had this one where I think there was still 7 minutes left in the game when Beathard ran that in, but maybe it was 6 minutes. But like, if he didn't score that touchdown, it's probably unlikely given what Dallas's plans were with all their backups in there at the time, and San Francisco's inability to really move the ball well. So it was just it's just difficult when you're playing on teams like that. Getting back to your point on Shady McCoy, if you go, and Tyrod Taylor for that matter, if you go to sharpfootballstats.com and go to the offensive drop-down tab under offense, go to the strength of schedule, you will see that the Buffalo Bills face the easiest schedule of opposing defenses the rest of the year, including, by far, the easiest schedule of opposing pass defenses. Personally, I dropped Carson Palmer in one of my leagues, and lo and behold, I don't know what he was doing there, but somebody had cut Tyrod Taylor, so I snagged Tyrod Taylor off the waiver wire because of his schedule the rest of the way. So I doubt that's going to be there for anybody who's playing with smart guys, because Tyrod Taylor is not going to be on your waiver wire at this time of the year. But at any rate, Buffalo, good schedule for Shady, good schedule for Tyrod moving forward, and a team that's really...
I was just looking at LaShawn McCoy's schedule the rest of the way. It's like every single team is bad against the run, or it's a shootout, he's got the best run defense schedule in the league the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and that's one of the things. You can filter all the metrics, and once I update strength of schedule at Sharp Football Stats tomorrow night, I'll tweet out about LaShawn McCoy in particular. But it's an absolutely gorgeous schedule, and to see it visualized the way that we do with the graphics, makes it really nice to look at and really easy for you guys to be able to see what it means. Last question, Evan, as usual, what is the one player or team that fell short this past week, but that you think might be able to bounce back potentially immediately?
Well, I don't know if they'll be able to bounce back, and I probably would bet against them bouncing back, but a team that needs to bounce back is Denver, which has dropped 2 in a row since their bye, and now they're heading to Kansas City, and I mean, Kansas City really needs to bounce back too. This is a huge, huge game for both of these teams. The Chiefs have dropped 2 in a row as well, and, of course, these teams both play in the AFC West, and this is absolutely critical for both clubs. And Denver, in their running game, they have gone to like a 3-way timeshare between C.J. Anderson, Devontae Booker, and Jamal Charles. That's going to be real frustrating, I think, for fantasy players going forward. This Chiefs team is not good on defense. They have gotten smashed against the run 4 games in a row. And, we talk about this, right away to start the season, but as teams figure out that the Chiefs are so weak at slot corner and right cornerback, these guys are just getting attacked relentlessly at this point. I mean, Terrence Mitchell, the Chiefs' right cornerback, is, he is like the DFS moneymaker. The Cardinals, the Cardinals, their number 2 cornerback, Justin Bethel, he had been the DFS moneymaker for a while. Now it's going to be Terrence Mitchell. I mean, he wakes up Amari Cooper, and this week the Broncos need to run Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders, depending on those guys' health, whoever they are the most healthy. Run those guys just directly at Terrence Mitchell and try to make plays in the passing game. And I think that they should be able to have success if they can do that. But, with this 3-way running back timeshare, I don't like that. I think that's suboptimal. It certainly is suboptimal in fantasy, but I think it's suboptimal also in real life unless you have an elite quarterback to where it just doesn't matter. You're going to have a good offense either way. But when you do not have an elite quarterback like Tom Brady or Drew Brees or whatever, I think that's a really suboptimal way to use your running back, to use your running game as a whole. Because it will give away tells to the defense what is coming, and teams can study that on tape and pick up what's going to happen before the snap of the ball, depending on which running back is in there, where he's lined up, things he does before the snap. So I think that and coaches, I guess they love the RBBCs, but I don't like that way of playing in both real life and obviously in fantasy.
Yeah, and actually that's exactly what I was going to say, and you beat me to the punch there. It reveals tendencies. Unless you're a team who's swapping these guys in just due to fatigue, just on a constant rotational basis, you have to play, the intelligent offenses run by intelligent coordinators are always game planning to their players' strengths and opponents' weaknesses, if possible, simultaneously. So you're not going to have, if a guy's better at catching passes out of the backfield, but he's not as good as the other guy at running the ball, then why would you sub him in and have him run the ball at a 50-50 split? You're going to end up throwing the ball more to this guy, so the defenses should know, hey, it's probably going to be a pass now that this guy's in the game. And there's just too many tendencies that can be revealed, and like you said, you can watch it on film, or guess what, we could go to Sharp Football Stats, and there's tons of ways, and I'm sure breaking this stuff down to see what direction certain running backs, like what types of play calls are made for running backs to certain directions based on a certain down or distance, whether they're going to be targeted in the passing game or not. So there's a lot of things that you could pick up from that website in conjunction with film study and really be able to figure out these teams pretty easily. That was excellent, Evan. Excellent insight and information. Guys, I highly recommend checking out Evan. We do the show together on Friday evening. We didn't get the show in this past week, but usually going forward, if you're subscribing on the Sharp Football Analysis Podcast, Sharp Football Analysis Podcast on iTunes, that's where you can find our show that we're going to be recording this Friday night and most of the week's Friday nights moving forward into the rest of the season. If you're looking at where you can find Evan on Twitter at Sharp Football. Evan is at Evan Silva. I am at Sharp Football, and highly recommend you guys follow Evan and follow his articles that he does on the matchups. He sends out matchup shows every single matchup articles every single Thursday evening before the games start. Great information, covers every single player on every single team. So that's a phenomenal read. You can find those at rotoworld.com. So Evan, thanks again for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoy the game, and good luck this week. We'll be talking to you soon. And guys, thanks again for joining us here. Again, like I said, the one thing that you can do as we prepare this to help spread the word is just retweet the show. It's on Twitter anyways. Just hit the retweet. Help spread the word. People will be able to watch it from the beginning of the show. Check out Sharp Football Stats. You can find tons of information there. It's all free. And you can follow me over at my analytics website, sharpfootballanalysis.com, where you can get my game predictions and projections that you can apply. I know a lot of guys who are applying that to DFS and to fantasy, looking at games that go over the total, looking at games that go under the total, because that's the easiest way to win, especially the tournaments, is to be higher on your usage rate on players that are in games that are going to go over the expected total, because so many players in fantasy make decisions based upon that total. And so you want to pick guys that are in games that we think will go over the total, straight from guys that you think will be in games that go under the total. So that's what some of the DFS guys are using Sharp Football Analysis and the weekly packages there for. But just retweet the show. That's going to help us out a ton. Thanks again. I'm glad you guys hit the Zeke. You know, I've missed some calls for sure. You know, that there's definitely always going to be calls that I miss. But the Zeke call was really strong, and then you had the call for the Jaguars. What is it, week 2 or week 3 over in London, where we had their tight end just absolutely crush. He had 3 touchdowns in that game too. So those, I think, were 2 of the by far the best calls on the season. The tight end for the Jaguars was the best, because nobody expected him to really do much of anything, and Lewis just killed. So Mercedes Lewis. So anyways, guys, thanks again. I'm gonna hit the road. You guys enjoy the rest of this game. Always appreciate you participating in the show and sharing your feedback. Feel free to retweet the show to get more viewers this one and next time. And you guys have a great evening. Thanks.